for everybody watching who doesn't know who you are, give us your story on a high level, right? Who is Nam? How'd you end up here? How'd you end up founding Lyra? Everything like that.
My name's Nam. I was born in Hanoi, Vietnam. I moved to Japan when I was 4 years old. Parents dragged me from Vietnam, pulled me out, showed me a better world. And when I was 11 years old, I saw there was an earthquake in Fukushima, and that shook my family a little bit. We were not going to leave it up to chances. Being on the Ring of Fire, if you guys read the geography books, Japan is actually on the Ring of Fire, and at any point in time, you could get killed by a earthquake. So we thought, okay, it's probably better to move off from Japan, not leave it up to chances. So I moved to Australia when I was 11 years old. I went to Gold Coast. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that little place up in Queensland. So yeah, I went to Gold Coast, Queensland for high school, and moved to Sydney when I was 18. So that's sort of my background and how I grew up.
And how did Lyra sort of come into light? I mean, you moved to Sydney at 18 for uni, but then how'd you find sort of the pathway into that?
Man, I was so lost in life, like before finding my footing. And I mentioned this online before, but like growing up, I was going back to like my origin story because I think it's related to Lyra. Like I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Like I felt like as someone who's so passionate about coding, building. I built Minecraft servers. I built unturned servers when I was 14 to 18. I traded Clash of Clans accounts. You know, I was super passionate about all the techie nerdy stuff. But I was also really interested in community building. I built a unturned server community as well. So I enjoyed both the intersection of technology and people. But I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. Like no one was interested in the nerdy stuff who was also interested in people stuff, and people who are interested in people stuff that was interested in the nerdy side. So I felt this inherent, just not being this inherent feeling of like not belonging anywhere. And I think many people feel the same who joined Lyra. Like I feel like they're hyperactive on the nerd, like technical side, and hyperactive on the people side, but don't feel like anywhere really takes them in. So I would say when I was 23 years old, April 2023 is when I decided, hey, I'm going to pull together a bunch of really smart people and put them all to startup projects in the US. And the rest is history, I suppose. Yeah.
It's really interesting how you sort of came up with the approach as well, because it's one of those things where Lyra in itself is almost like its own community of people who sort of don't fit the status quo. It's pretty cool. But yeah, let's actually go deeper into sort of the earlier stage of, you know, your different side projects, selling Clash Royale accounts, you know, your Minecraft servers and stuff.
Clash of Clans.
I've
never played Clash Royale.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah. OG. But yeah, you're making, I think it was like 50K you mentioned somewhere, off like a gaming community or something like that as a teenager. Now, most people watching this have honestly never made money from something that they've built. They're more so from like the creator side of things. So walk us through what that sort of felt like to get that initial bit of traction.
This was for unturned servers. So if you guys have never played Unturned, it's like if Minecraft and Rust had a baby, and it's a game on Steam. Again, this was in 2014. I'm an unk, right? So it's back in my time. So Unturned was such a popular game back then. It had 1 million players in US. It's an open world survivor game. So I hosted game servers for it, which means like Minecraft. I don't know if you've played Minecraft before, but you can join servers. And in servers, it's like different game modes. There's like plugins that the server owners can host to modify it. I hosted unturned servers for like 4 years, right? And I never started unturned servers to make money. The reason I started this whole gaming community was because I was so fed up with what was available outside. Like there was no game modes that I wanted to play. There was no community that I felt really belonged to. This is a very niche in unturned game community. Like there's no certain game modes that existed. So I was like, hey, like I'm going to make a server that fills this gap. And I'm going to build a community around people that enjoy this specific game mode, which was OP kits. It was like a server where the kit, you know, this is very specific, but you could spawn guns that were more OP, overpowered versus other servers. And this niche didn't exist. I started with that niche, and I expanded. I hosted about maybe 27 servers across the US over 4 years. And in hosting the service, I realized you actually have to pay for the compute, which is the machine that actually runs the room for people to join. So I was like, hey guys, I'm just a 15-year-old student from public state high school in Gold Coast. I have no money. Like I asked my parents for $20 on PayPal to buy this like game server. Like, can you guys, please donate? It started as donation. Like, can you please donate? And I'll give you like this cool OP kits, cool game tags in game. I'll give you all these perks. And that's the Await Sports server. And then in doing so, I accidentally discovered e-commerce because people were willing to pay what I called a donation back then. People were willing to donate for certain perks in the game, and then I made it available on a website. It was hosting it was like this e-commerce website back then. I forgot the name of it. I think it was Engine website or something. It was EINJ. Yeah, can't spell. Didn't win the spelling bee, but did that. Sold a bunch of kits over the course of 4 years and made $50,000.
Now it's almost like that one Canon event as a teenager. I had a similar thing. I was actually in drop shipping, and that was my first dig into ecom, and I did a very similar figure.
Oh, interesting.
I think in high school when I was about 16, so it's like year 10 for our Aussies here. That's when I hit my first 60K aggregate, and then that I just sort of lived off of that for the rest of my high school life and like even into university. So it's definitely a Canon event that sort of breaks the barrier towards you being like, oh, I can actually do this. And it breaks your reality.
You can do things.
Yeah, you can just
Can you believe it? You can just do things. It's crazy.
Let's go up the timeline a bit. Let's creep up, right? So I think you joined Eucalyptus and then also Canva, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So Canva, one of the biggest unicorns to come out of Australia. What was the sort of internal conversation that you had with yourself once you reached that point? Working a little bit more into big tech, and then deciding to end up leaving that space.
Yeah. Dude? When I got in Canva, like I feel I made it. Like I was like, holy shit! Like I got into big tech. I'm gonna have a stable salary. People around me was gonna be crap, and I'm gonna be like happy for the rest of my life. Chapter closed. Ready to get married. But I think 3 months in, I realized that when you work in a big company, you get to maintain a small system of a bigger company. So that is that is something that is usually quite hard to change when you work for a big company. You get to own a smaller piece when you work for them. And in Canva, I had a lot of this potential energy. I came in super passionate. I built this servers, community gaming. I worked in startup, and I was like, I'm ready to I'm ready to I'm ready to build anything. But unfortunately, the work that was given to me, I felt was quite small in scope. And even though people around me were so talented, I felt like I learned, heaps of things around best practices in engineering, how to build really good front end, how code base is structured well so that, you can scale it with millions of engineers. Sorry, not millions of people, and then about 2,000 engineers. It was just like the responsibility that was given to me was just not enough. And I unfortunately felt this word bored. A lot of engineers, they seek for change, not because of comp reasons or stress or anything. Actually, the biggest reason engineers, if you search it up, is actually because of boredom. And I unfortunately became bored after 3 months. And I decided to take a change and started Lyra.
So it was very heavily based on ownership and the amount of ownership you actually took in sort of your big tech roles. Yeah, let's go into Lyra then, because the origin story of that too is a bit wild. So we'll, again, creep up the timeline a bit. So your roommates, tell me if I'm wrong with this, your roommates were asking for coding help, and that sort of turned into what Lyra is, at least as an MVP. I'm curious to hear about like what happened after that sort of first win, that first bit of traction, because I feel like this whole part of your story is very heavily based on momentum. So how did you go from just like helping mates out with the background that you have to now running an over 85 person studio?
It's very simple for me. I only do things when there's demand. Yes, I have to helping my roommates launch the product and, then become this rocket ships, seed, Series A, and, keep moving forward, I saw like this huge potential where people in Silicon Valley need really smart engineers, and they couldn't hire fast enough. So I was like, hey, I know people in Australia, I know how smart they are, and I'm going to supply you with really smart engineers, and let's make it happen. So I did really good job for Paraform, and then I got intro to other companies, and other companies intro me to other companies, and I've done 0 email outbound. I've never posted any sales stuff online. Up until recently, I started doing more sales stuff, but for the first 2.5 years, heads down, like Lyra did not exist on social media. We were just focusing on doing the best work for our clients, for every single one of them, and it multiplied. Like 1 became 3 because they introduced me 2, and then 2 became 4, 4 became 8, and so on. We just multiplied like that.
It goes to show that, being able to deliver success and deliver or over deliver is probably one of the most important aspects of you being able to roll the momentum forward.
Yeah, exactly right.
You've also chosen to bootstrap Lyra. This is something that I sort of initially heard of, and I was like, oh, that's awesome, right? So no investors, no VC was necessary for it. I want to sort of understand the decision, because I think a lot of people watching assume that you sort of need money to build something real, like some sort of pre-seed to actually get the ball rolling. So what is, first off, your take on that? And if the case is, oh, well, you don't necessarily need to, how can they then get started without getting that sort of pre-seed?
This is a question I get asked a lot, and thank you, Jayden, for bringing it up. I think the VC game is a very specific game. If you want to go down the VC game, you're willing to build $1 billion company. Like, that is what the VC industry is for. It's to pump money in to startups that will go towards like a unicorn, right? That's what venture scale. And these startups are usually traditionally SaaS model, where it costs a lot to build, and then once you build it, you go to market, expand, and then you capture the whole market, and then you return billions of dollars for VCs. Now, I would say not all businesses are venture backable business, and not all businesses are startup business, right? So Lyra, in a lot of ways, is a startup company because we have bright logos, we wear brand, we post a lot online, we in a lot of ways we run it like a startup, but it's actually more of a traditional business where we are driven by purely revenue, right? We solve a problem for the clients, and then they pay us, and we go forward. I think for a lot of people, they need to understand that you don't have to start a startup to succeed. Like, you don't have to make your company venture backable to succeed in life. That is a marketing thing, not marketing, but that is something that is what often gets shoved down to people's throat. It's like, hey, you got to start a startup, you got to build a startup, but it's the only way to do business. But they forget that that's like 0.1% of a type of business. And I think there's many different types, and the nuance that isn't captured in the market. So people just think, oh, if you're starting a new company, that's a startup, right? And sorry, it's a long way of going back to your question, which is, what should people think about? When they start a new company, they need capital, and I think it depends on what business you're building. If you're building a business to become a unicorn, won't be bad to look into VC support. But otherwise, you have really good AI tools now. You've Claude Code, you've got Codex, 5.4 I think just came out. You've got Gemini, anti-gravity. You've got all these tools to build a product and build a business and prove it first, and then you can make a decision there. So I think you don't need to jump straight for capital.
For sure. I think it's like definitely understanding the fact that your traditional business models can still work. I feel like the glamour of the startup world sort of jades you into trying to get into that sort of association game where you start to operate and you start to work around building the startup rather than trying to solve the problem.
Correct.
Which is a really, really funky thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's sort of the same contention that I had with Six Sense, like my own company. And that's, now that we've sort of gone through those motions, it's definitely something that is something that should be talked about a lot more, which is great. But yeah, I also want to ask Lyra Capital, right? So this was something I was pretty curious to sort of hear about as well, since you launched it this year, right?
Very recent.
So what was the sort of rationale behind that?
It's very simple. When you have a room full of smart people like Lyra, eventually people want to build their own thing, right? That is something that I understand, and I know that is going to be not if, it's more like when. When you put a lot of smart young people into one room, they're all builders, they're all ambitious, want to do a lot. Eventually one of them will want to try out business, try out startup, etc. And we want to be the first to support that, right? So at Lyra, the culture is very simple. You come into Lyra, you spend your time, learn, grow, and literally working with Stanford, Harvard, MIT founders from Silicon Valley, learning the best way of building startups. And say one day you have a crazy idea, you want to pursue it and you feel ready, we will back you. And that's as simple as that. I built this mainly to support my team members who later have different ambitions, and I am fully cognizant of that. And I want to be there to support. So that's pretty much what Lyra Capital is.
It's sort of like you're still working in this ecosystem, but you basically just filled a black box on that, where it's like, I want to be able to back the ambition of the people that back us.
Exactly.
You and your brother, what's the dynamic like between you two? Building as family as well, because that's probably an interesting point to look at.
Yes.
What should people look for as well in a co-founder? Because I feel like your situation is a pretty interesting one just because of that sort of family connection. But what should people look for as well?
I would say that look for a co-founder that has complementary skill to you. And I think that is exactly what An is to me. Like I'm someone who's pretty much type A, like very type A, very logical, very like very intense person, like bam, bam, bam. Whereas An is more accommodating. I think he's more I would say high EQ than me. Understanding people better. I think he's better around people and able to manage people better than me. I focus more on the business side and drive things forward. Takes care of the business and making sure it's still maintaining a culture side of things, making sure people are happy. They're coming to work feeling fulfilled. And my brother's really good at that. And I think we have pretty much a complementary skill set. And I would say with the reality is we still fight sometimes, and like on like how to do things. Like, hey, like why did you do it this way? Like, why did you send that email in this tone? I think you've done this. Or like, hey, why did you make that decision to promote this engineer when I feel like this other engineer is more deserving, right? So we've like these small like arguments here and there, but whenever things heat up, we both know that we want what's best for Lyra. And I think that is such a strong thing. Like when you work with a family member, is you have that inherent trust layer that whatever the other person, like whatever decision the other person makes, it is for the best. Like it is for the good of the company, and the trust layer is solved. Actually, one more interesting thing. My mom is the finance person in my company, so she helps with the finance, and that layer of trust is solved as well. I would say working with your family members, the con is like, say if you don't handle it well and things fall apart, your family might fall apart. But the pro is you have that inherent trust layer, and if you can make it work, it is the biggest advantage in life, which is what I felt at Lyra. And so far, it's been working really well. And we work together really well. We know that every decision, even after a huge argument, is for the better of the company. And I'll share with you something I learned recently on a podcast. I don't know who said this. I don't know, Jeff Bezos or one of the big fan company founders. But whenever there's a big argument, they will say, okay, time out. And then we'll hear, okay, so you think we should do it A in this way, and I think we should do it B this way. How strongly do you feel about this? And then 3, 2, 1, and we say from number from 1 to 5. I'll be like, okay, 3 out of 5. And my brother might be like 4 out of 5. And I'm like, okay, go your way. I disagree, but I trust that because you feel stronger about this, we'll go your way. And I found that to be one of the best way to solve any conflict. I learned this literally like 2 months ago on a podcast, and then I've been applying it in my company. Whenever we disagree, like me or my co-founder or, a two-partner, Suki or Manon, who is part of the core leadership team, whenever we disagree, okay, out of 5, how strongly do you feel about it? 3, 2, 1, 2, 5. Okay, you go. And the rest is history. Yeah.
You finding a co-founder has so many layers of the onion that you need to try and peel off, right? So like, I guess the first one that you mentioned first is just like making sure that the co-founder has complementary skills to you, something that you don't have that they're just innately better at than you, and then they have the gap that you can fill as well.
Correct.
That sort of superpower pair together just makes it so that you can accelerate all the way up to the moon so much faster.
Exactly.
Then the next one, I guess, is also the family side of things. Like, yes, it's a really risky move because the downside is, yeah, if the company falls apart, the family falls apart as well. You're almost linking the personal and the work and the business. But then there's also the pro of the fact that in tough situations, you can't run away. It's not something that you can simply give up on, because now this is something that is ingrained into stakes. So yeah, that was a really interesting point that you brought up as well.
I want to add, like, coming from a very traditional, like, Asian family background. So I was born in Hanoi, I grew up with very strong Vietnamese background. I value family as number one. Above everything else, family is number one, which means to me, it is the strongest foundation if you were to build a trust on. And most of that trust, all the things like finance, big decision in the company, I can rely on my family to make the best decisions. And therefore, starting out with that foundation gave us this insane boost that, yeah, after 3 years, we're 85% corporate. Zero VC back.
Yeah.
Purely driven by revenue.
And then also just like overall how to manage making decisions. You know, when you add an extra person, this is something that a lot of, I feel like, solo founders would think about as well, where they say, hey, I don't want to bring somebody on because now I have to sort of democratically make decisions rather than just saying, okay, done, let's do it.
Yeah.
Right. But like the decisioning tree that you've gone through, I think in the podcast from whoever actually did say it, it was super funny because like the decision that you end up making is based on not just logic but also intent, and being able to sort of number score the intent is something that I feel like, yeah, would be something that would love to sort of spread across to the world. So no, thank you for bringing that up. That's something I learned today. Definitely bring it into my team then.
When you argue, just ask your founder how much you care about this from 1 to 5. Whoever cares more, let that person decide. If you just can't, like, if you can't resolve it, ask who cares more. Let them decide. Yeah.
Let's go into a little bit of the team, and I think this is gonna go into you sort of being your type A, type B on relationship as well. So I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this was a few months ago or like last, I can't remember, but I think An posted on LinkedIn at one point about how SF's tech culture operates a little bit differently to Australia. And it's partially due to like the working hours, and that's sort of where it went viral, right? Because
Yeah.
you guys probably have a different take on sort of longer hours and hustle culture and stuff. I have a very different take on this as well. So
Yeah.
there we go. But where do you sort of land in the ambition in Australia, right? Do you think that we have an innovation problem?
I would say before this, I'll address the post.
Done.
It's so stupid. When you put an engineer on the marketing, and we posted that, and then we post a lot all the time. Like we post once a day, and then unfortunately the wording of that post was not very good, and the intent was understood incorrectly. We wanted to mainly suggest that in order to achieve greatness, sometimes you have to do what is not comfortable as society to achieve it, right? And in SF, it seems like working long hours, but that wasn't what we were trying to suggest. We were just saying that sometimes you have to do extraordinary things to achieve greatness. And sometimes that means working till 11:30. Lesson learned, hire a marketing team and don't let engineers just post long things. I would say in Australia, what we have is a lot of talent, right? I'll start by saying Australia has a lot of great talent, and it has a great environment for someone who's very smart to become extremely high performing, right? So we have great, like there's like very out there, but sorry, not out there. It's very high level, but like we've got great air quality, we've got great nature, we've got great food, very healthy things. We've got huge land to run on, so everyone's very healthy and fit, right? In Australia, in general, and all the right environments for a smart person to achieve greatness. And I think Australia has all that. Where I think Australia can improve is on knowing what it takes to achieve greatness. And I think that a lot of people underestimate that, right? Like in Australia, we have this concept of tall poppy syndrome, where if someone is trying something very different, like posting something that is very rage baity online, just trying something different than what everyone else is doing, like a tall poppy in a field of normal poppies, people would smash that. They're like, man, what are you doing? You're delusional for doing that. Like, how can you even think? You're cringe. Like you're like, you don't know what you're talking about. You like, get back down. Get back down. And who are you talking about? Like, so you're cringe in Australia. I feel like you're cringe until you're not. Right? Like you do all these cringy things, and you get mocked by people. People think you're crazy for like doing something that what others people aren't willing to do. And then once you become successful, they're like, oh shit, like, damn, that's cool. Like, I guess they made it. And that is so out of my league. I can never achieve that. Gonna go back to what I'm usually used to. So Australia has that culture of tall poppy syndrome that slashes out whenever someone does something different. And I think that what people can understand is to achieve greatness is very, like, takes a lot. It's very competitive. Yeah, we live in a very globalized world where there's a lot of competition, from the East, from US, people wanting to achieve great. And I think if we aren't willing to compete in the world stage, we might fall behind. And that is not a good thing as a country.
This was sort of my take on this, and I'm sure you guys had a very similar thing, because we do definitely in Australia have the foundations for longevity. I feel like we have the talent, and we also have the ability to maintain them. Right? I feel like we're probably one of the most laid back, and I guess like in a trendy way, we have the most low cortisol economy to operate in.
We do. We're one of the happiest people in the world, I think.
Yeah, pretty much, right? We have such a great work-life balance. But then it also almost curses us, because you start to forget the type of commitment that you actually need to then become that sort of overachiever, and then bridge that gap, between the I'm just getting started and I'm like embarrassing myself from this tall poppy syndrome aspect, and then actually breaking that barrier and everyone just being like, oh, cool, nice. That's not really something that I can do, but I mean, they're there now, right? So I feel like, yeah, definitely just being able to understand, well, it takes sometimes those long nights. It takes the dedication. Sometimes these people want to be there those long hours. It's not like you're really pushing them to be there. It's like, oh, we have to deliver this right now, So there's definitely that aspect as well. And I'm super glad that, like, honestly, that type of discussion came up, because I feel like now, especially because the startup culture in Australia now is starting to ramp up a little bit, that discussion is becoming more and more relevant. I ask this to every guest who come on to Standouts, but should everybody be creating content? You mentioned that the team posts now every single day. So how important is it for, even on the business side of things, not just your personal brand, we'll go into both of them, but your business side and then your personal brand, how important is it for everyone to make content?
Oof, man, it has never been more important. Like, I would say, stepping into 2026, since building is so, like, building, what I mean is like building an app, building a product is becoming easier by the time, right? Like with AI and Codex, Claude Code, anti-gravity, you can build a lot of great things, and everyone has that tool now. So the building part of things, the playing field has leveled, right? So then what is the next sort of like edge you have? And I would say that's distribution, right? Like everyone has this, like, say, web app that solves your accounting problem, okay? There's 1,000 of them. But then there's like, say, addressable market is 1 million people, right? How can you get these people to use your product and not your friend's product, and not that person's product, or not her product, right? So I would say the only way to change that is through storytelling, through marketing, and through ensuring that they know about your product, number one, they know about your product, number two, and they feel some sort of emotional connection, when they see your brand. Like, oh shit, like that accounting software is built by this like two teenage who dropped out of college, high school, never went to college, and worked tirelessly for like a whole year building it. Man, I'll give that a try, right? So I think now with building things being the easier part, the main challenge is getting it to the hand of the user. Oh, sorry, not challenge, but the main thing is getting the user to use your product, which is a distribution. And that is more important than ever. So I highly recommend everyone to start posting, speak to Jayden, he's a professional on how to build up their personal brand and really start building that distribution channel, because that is so important, in my opinion.
I actually say this to clients sometimes as well. This is like literally in the very first onboarding call that I push them, and I'll actually share this with you a little bit as well. But the first thing is, I am by far not the only one in my market, in my industry. You know, there are so many other people who say I can build your personal brand for you, right? But the people who are on call with me, my clients, the first thing that I told them was, why are you all here? Right? Was it because of the auditors that I provide for you guys? Is it because of the email sequencing that I did where I shared all of the insights that I have on branding? Was it because, you know, maybe I'm Asian? You know, that's one thing as well, right? Was it any of those things? Was it because I did discovery calls with a few people who are early adopters? Was it any of that? I told them it was none of those things. It was because I built a level of trust with them better than anybody else on the internet. It's because people innately buy from people. So if you can share and distribute your own story, it's almost like people aren't just investing in the solution that you can provide. They're investing in the fact that you're the one who came up with that solution. And that's sort of where the whole distribution of content and everything like that comes in and why it's so important. This is also something that I wanted to bring up, but I think Lyra does this the absolute best at the moment, and that's world building. So I guess like run me through how you sort of built the Lyra universe as a business to get, you know, your different engineers as characters, you know, your growth team as characters as part of the wider Lyra universe.
Oh, honestly, it's very simple. Stick to truth as much as possible. Like, if this person's a funny person, that's the funny guy. If this person is like the edgy one who uses all these tools and trying to be like, that is the edge character, right? So I would say stick to truth as much as possible. And I think people really love authenticity. And that is the only way to do content long term. It's like, just be yourself. It's like, as cliche it sounds, it's like, be yourself. Each of you, be yourself. Who are you? You're the funny guy. Okay, that's you. Who are you? Okay, you're the running guy. Okay, because you do running and you want to do running. Yeah, do that. So being yourself and being consistent, I think that's how we did it.
Yeah, for sure. There's the authenticity barrier. And it's also like, how can you break down the wall between, you know, where you actually sit in, you know, your day-to-day, and then also the content that you actually push out? Are you actually the type of person that you say you are?
Yeah.
And that bridging that sort of gap helps so incredibly much compared to any other different like growth hack or anything like that. You know, the strategy can come later. You just need to bring out your character.
Exactly.
But yeah, you started your own personal brand a little bit, and this is something that I want to dig into as well. But like, first off, what was the rationale behind actually digging in and building your own personal brand? Was it just like a sort of branch off from the Lyra content, or like where did that sort of come in?
I would say I've always had this creativity itch. Like, I'm a builder at heart. I like building things. I like to turn things from nothing to something, and creative space is one aspect of that, where I wanted to create something, right? The word creativity, create. Right? And I've always been afraid to post online about what I had, what thoughts I had, because I have this like huge imposter syndrome ever since I was a kid. As cliche as it sounds, I've always felt like whatever I have to say that has no meaning, because I feel like people around me are like 20 times smarter, right? So I've kept to myself. Like, Lyra was not on the radar, like no social presence up until maybe August or maybe July last year, right? So I just focused the company on just like, okay, do well for the client. And then more recently, I was like, shit, like, you know, I have all these things I want to say. Like, I've got this itch that I want to scratch, but I don't have anything to like, I don't have this muscle to post. So I'm like keeping it to myself, or like over dinner table, I'll talk for like 3 hours, and then everyone's like, oh, it's now I'm yapping again. So I have this pent up energy of where like I want to share with the world. So I think maybe August, I actually met this incredible growth person, Hugh, who works in my firm. Hugh Fan, he suggested, hey, why don't you just start posting? And I'm like, I bet. So I just did it. I started posting. I'm trying to be as authentic as possible. No AI, no ghostwriter. You know, just me. You know, and a notepad. I'm just like writing my thoughts, and it's really fun. I'd say I'm looking back. I'm so glad I did it that night in August, and I highly recommend whoever is listening to this to just write something, post, and see how it goes. It's such a fun thing to do.
He was awesome. Like, well, he was when he joined, he wasn't even 18 yet, wasn't it?
No, I think he was 17. He turned 18.
It was insane. When I first met him, I was like, oh, this guy. But yeah, It's really cool as well that you brought up the whole idea of building a personal brand around yourself, but it wasn't necessarily for the purpose of building, any type of leverage or any type of monetization engine. Because I feel like that's the thing that tends to get lost, especially in the intention side of things on why people end up getting started in the first place. They start to think, hey, I'm going to build the brand purely to monetize, make money, or even the other side of things, like I'm just going to do it for the attention. You kind of forget the whole point of building a personal brand is to find yourself. And honestly, yeah, you being able to like share your thoughts as well, it's something that ends up keeping you in the game for longer, and like overall you end up building that level of trust in the brand that you actually want to be represented with.
I'll tell you what, Jayden, ever since I started posting online and doing more creative things, it forced me to stop and think. Like whenever you write something and sharing with people, you have to stop and think. Right? That very simple concept of stopping and thinking has like taught me to be a better thinker. Like now I am able to articulate my thoughts better. I understand where I stand in the world. I understand what my core values are. I think it's very important to write the piece that you're proud of and post it online, even if it's not that polished. Just like that's your idea, and getting that muscle in of like where do you actually stand, what do you actually believe. I think that's very powerful as anyone really. Yeah.
Does it help shape your decisions in a way, right? Because you're now able to be a lot more introspective with like everything that you do, and you can be more intentional.
Definitely.
Yeah. Awesome. What's your big bet on the idea of building community around your business in 2026? I know you've sort of done it with Lyra, but it's probably going to be more important now with like, removing that sort of barrier to, product design, and you sort of said distribution is going to be a lot more prevalent in the actual process of building a business or even a startup. So yeah, what is your big bet on community building as a business?
I would say that, as mode shifts away from who can build to who can get this product to the user's hand, like building community is like, what it is, it's a network. You're building a network, right? And your network is your net worth. I think that is like pretty much the edge right now. It's like who can convince a room full of people to listen to what you have to say. And if you can convince them to listen to what you have to say, you're the winner. Because then even if there's a million other products like yours, because you own distribution and you own their loyalty and their attention, you win. So I think that's, again, I'll say it again, it's the competitive edge.
For the people who are trying to get into it, so let's just say like they've built out their product, they've validated it, they've gone about actually shipping this, and now they're at the stage of how do I get my first few users, how do I get my first few customers? How do you start to get that flywheel going? How do you start to build that first bit of traction?
I have a lot of thoughts of this. If you finish building your product and then your first question is how do I get my first customers, you're dead out of the water. Like you in my very strong opinion, that's not how you solve a problem. It should be you go to a person, they tell you the problem, right? It's a real problem they have. You build a solution and boom, you already have customers that are using it. I think if you build this polished, really nice looking product, and then your second thought is, okay, I'm going to try and find my customers, that ain't going to work. So what does that mean in translating how to build a good business? I would say first, actually find like your customers, like before you build anything, before you do anything, like just talk to customers. Say you work at a company, talk to your PMs, your managers, whoever your target is, right? Keep them in touch. Say like, hey, if I had this solution for your problem, would it actually solve it? And they could be, oh yeah, sounds good or not good. And if they say yes, we're about, okay, can you pay me $100, and then I'll solve it. And then if they're willing to pay you, then let's do it. If they're not willing to pay you, then I don't think the problem is burning enough to be solved. I think it's as simple as that. I'm very like I think this is not like not everyone has to do business this way, but this is how I do business. Is I'm not doing anything until I get paid, and the money that gets paid to me is the validation that the problem is worth solving. That's it.
I love the conviction of this because this is sort of how I operate as well, because it's like, if you can't get somebody to open up their wallet, first of all, and you can actively solve a problem that they're willing to pay for, then there is almost no traction at all in the first place.
Yep.
You know, building a product for somebody when they don't actually want it is almost like you're trying to spoon feed a baby whose like mouth won't open.
Exactly.
No, I really love that take.
Like just take, like, it's very, very, very simply, like, business exists to solve a problem. And if you're not solving a problem, aka if people are not paying you to solve the problem, like, you shouldn't do that. And if you are solving a problem, then that's a business. Then you keep scaling, and then that's a company.
If you could go back and talk to 18-year-old Nam, you know, the kid who just headed off into university, you know, figuring it all out, what would you tell him today? Now, with all the knowledge that you have today, what would you go back and affirm him on or tell him?
I think that's a really good question. And I would say that keep stepping into your curiosity. Right? Like, if there's one advice I'll give to myself back then, it is to keep, whatever people think it's like, even if people think it's like strange, weird, why are you trading Clash of Clans accounts? Why are you building this gaming service for people in Midwest in the US and building the community over there when you're in Gold Coast or like in Sydney? Whatever this crazy niches, keep leaning into curiosity. And curiosity will lead you to places that, curiosity will lead you to success in life. You know, it'll lead you to the right place, right problem that you want to solve. Keep leaning through curiosity. Yeah.
It's almost like every single step that you take is almost a pivotal moment, regardless of whether or not you end up stepping. Maybe that's the thing that actually gets you to the stage that you eventually want to get into.
Exactly.
So no, I absolutely love that piece of advice. I would listen to that every day of the week. Well, awesome. Nam, well, thank you so much for hopping on. I know this is so crazy because we actually tried to get an in real life thing, but you're all around the world now. So that's crazy. You know, I'm not going to see you in like a year.
I'm a nomad.
But no, thank you for coming on. And honestly, for those who are listening into this, I hope that your mind has been changed on anything to do with, you know, finding a co-founder, breaking down sort of the barriers and beliefs that you had on business and startups, and even maybe starting that piece of content, maybe starting that brand. And if you do, then I mean, we have the people here, the networks to get you started. So yeah, that's a wrap. Love it.
Thank you, Jane.